This session today, I will be touching a lot more on ISQM 1, which talks about the firm-wide quality management systems or processes. Then, of course, we have ISQM 2, as well as the ISA 220 on those that are involved in the audit engagement itself. So the objective of ISQM 1, there are two. One is for the firm, the other is for the SOQM. Now, this term SOQM is something that you will be seeing quite regularly from now on. But SOQM, what does it stand for? It stands for System of Quality Management. So the objective of the firm is to design, implement, and operate a SOQM, System of Quality Management, across the world. And of course, ISA 220 complement it at the engagement level. And the objective of the SOQM is to provide a firm with reasonable assurance, just like in audit, you provide reasonable assurance on the set of financial statement. ISQM will allow you to give a reasonable assurance that the firm and its personnel fulfill their responsibility in accordance with their professional standards. That means it could be ISAs, it could be AUP standards, and so on and so forth. Applicable legal and regulatory requirement. Here we could be talking about companies that your audit licensing condition. We remember that, and the conduct of engagement in accordance with such standards and requirements. And by the way, I forgot, it will also cover the code of ethics. The first one. Second is the engagement report eventually issued by the firm or the engagement partners are appropriate in the circumstances. So two major objectives. The firm as personnel fulfill their responsibilities in terms of law, regulation, code of conduct, audit licensing condition. And second is the engagement report that is being issued is appropriate for the circumstances. So in this case, there's a lot of processes that's going to be involved, change management in terms of your staffing, perhaps even upgrading of resources. So all this has to be managed through a system, and ISQM 1 is to provide you the guidance on how to move from the previous ISQC to now the ISQM itself. Now, if you can look at this, remember the term SOQM stands for System of Quality Management, and there are 8 components within the SOQM identified separately. But in your implementation process, it doesn't mean that you must have 8 components in your quality manual or in your policy and procedures handbook, because some of these could be embedded into the other component. For example, information and communication. You can embed the requirements into the various other components, so that's fine. And if you look at this from the ISQM, ISQC perspective, there are a few new things that you need to be aware of. The first very major difference is the firm risk assessment process, or FRAP. And this is a new addition to the ISQM, which is not available in the ISQC. In the ISQC, the standard is very prescriptive. It tells you what to do. But here in ISQM, because it is a risk management-based standard, so it gives you guidance on how you approach this, but a lot of this will be left to the firm to manage, because the risk for each firm will be different. So this is one major part which you will not be able to find in the ISQC. The second one is the resources. In the ISQC, we only have the human resources. But now, under the ISQM, you will have intellectual resources or intellectual property, and as well as technology resources. Because let's face it, this is how the profession has moved on. The monitoring and remediation process, yes, it is there in ISQC, but under ISQM, there are a lot of new features that has been included inside. For example, root cause analysis. How do you perform a RCA, a root cause analysis on deficiency? There are guided materials inside. And one of the major components in ISQM is the evaluation process or the. So as a firm, whether you are auditing or whether you are providing a agreed upon procedures or review engagements is involved in this type of engagement, you will need to have the ISQM standard operating in the firm itself. And for certain type of engagement, you may need to have what we call the EQR. In the past, it's called the EQCR. Now it's called the EQR, Engagement Quality Review. And this one will be captured under ISQC, ISQM2. And the third one is if you are doing auditing, of course, you need to also comply with ISA 220 revised quality control and the engagement level. So all these three standards come together to be known as the quality management standard itself. So remember when I say quality management standards, it could be firm-wide, engagement across, as well as EQR if you have client that fall into that basket of risk itself. Now it's important to note that regardless of your size, whether you are sole proprietor with no staff or sole proprietor with 30 staff or big four mid-tier, you need to comply with ISQM 1 and if applicable, ISQM 2 itself. All three standards will be known as the quality management standard. Now, some aspect of the standard system of quality management may not be feasible in a small firm like sole proprietor firms. So in this respect, you may want to ensure that some of the control elements and the firm-wide system itself is to be practiced at the engagement level. So that is possible, but I always caution the firm. If you put everything at the engagement level itself and your engagement level fail, then it is very difficult for you to assess your system of quality management and say that it is operating reasonably well, or give you the reasonable assurance that a firm is operating under the ISQM standard itself. You can escalate or de-escalate some of the control from the firm level to the engagement level, but that comes with certain risks, or whether you are able to be aware of this. Whether you are a small firms, a mid-tier firms, or big multinational, whether you are a small firms, a mid-tier firms, or big multinational, the standards can be applied. How is it scalable there? Bear in mind, the ISQM standard has been designed in a way to be scalable. So it is such that whether you are a small firms, a mid-tier firms, or big multinational, the standards can be applied. How is it scalable there? First thing is that instead of the standard telling you what to do, the standards will tell you what are the quality objectives and what are the intention of those quality objectives. That means it talks about the outcome of the quality objective and not how you achieve those quality objectives. So this is where it gives you the flexibility. Each firm can design their approach. Second is that the quality risk, you can tailor it to your firm's circumstances. So this is where you look at your condition, your event, your circumstances, your action or inaction, and how that will have an impact on the quality risk. The quality risk is the risk that some of your quality objectives may not be achieved because of certain reasons. So that is the risk itself. The good news about the standard is that there is only a limited number of required specific responses. Look at para 34 of the standard. So there are only 6 items in it. On top of that, there is, of course, the co-file review 7. Then there is this evaluation of the FOQM, annual evaluation 8. The 9th so-called mandatory part of the standard deals with the documentation part. Very, very few prescription. It is up to you to then decide what is applicable, take it on and implement it and test and make sure that the implementation runs as intended. And of course, the requirement for the monitoring and remediation process set out what the firm is expected to have in place to address the monitoring and remediation process. Remember the SOQM, there are only 2 processes and 6 components. The 2 processes are prep and monitoring and remediation. These 2 are processes, the rest are components of the quality system itself. Now, in the next slides, from slide number 8 to slide number 17, I list out all the quality objectives that will apply to most SMPs. That means if you are a very typical SMP in Malaysia, take those quality objectives, look at and then design the response to make sure that at the end of the day, you still meet the quality objective. Okay, so I listed down, but please, I will also urge you to go and read the standard, just in case me or my staff have failed to or have accidentally missed out one of the items. So at least if you read the standards, you make sure that these are all covered. So if you look at this table which I have here, the first risk assessment process and the monitoring and remediation process, these 2 are what we call processes. And because these are processes, it doesn't have a quality objective. It has a control objective, yes, but not a quality objective. So because these are things that you need to put into implementation. Okay, but from the quality element number 2, governance and leadership, to information and communication, it will add up all the, here I call it control objective or quality objective. It will add up all these points across 8 plus 4 plus 3 plus 6 plus 9 plus 6. You will have 30. It's supposed to be 36, but I made a mistake here. Under resources, I put 9 points, but actually there are only 8. So if we add up the governance and leadership to information and communication, you would have 35 quality objectives. A typical SMP should be able to manage in that respect. So if you are drawing out a risk register, you can put out all the quality objective at one end of the pages. Then the next pages is where you do a risk assessment. What are the possibilities of all these things not being achieved? And that is what you call quality risk. And after that, to design the appropriate response to that quality risk itself. And I make it easier so you can look at the ISQM 1 reference from our para 28 to para 33 itself. So remember, there are 35 quality objectives that you need to manage within your practice itself. The ISSB has actually confirmed or stated that for a typical SMP, if you have taken all these 35 quality objectives, you should be there. Unless your practice is so unique that you do have additional quality objective. So in this respect, then you will need to add on to the risk register itself, right? So, but otherwise, going through para 28 to para 33, it will give you the whole spectrum of quality objective that you need to deal with in a typical SMP. Design or assess the quality risk, ISQM operates in that manner. So a lot of people, as I see it from the poll, we are starting to read the standards, spend time on para 28 to para 33, and that will tell you the type of quality objective you need to put in place in your practice to be in compliance with ISQM 1 itself. Now, of course, in the quality objective that is listed here, not all are going to be applicable to you. For example, there's one quality objective under resources that deals with service provider. So if you don't use service provider, obviously that quality objective doesn't apply to you. Another one is where you have just started off, you don't have any staff. So obviously, relevant ethical requirements applicable to the staff doesn't apply to your practice because you don't have staff. You are just starting off on your own today. And then there is also the need for EQR in in the response. And if your client doesn't fit certain profile, then you need to have an EQR. Then in this case, you don't need to have an EQR. So this is how the standard has been crafted in a way that it is scalable in that sense. So you can take what is applicable and apply it, forget about the rest itself. Just now, as I mentioned, these are the quality objectives from leadership and governance to information and communication, which are compiled from the standard. And these are the quality objectives that the firm will have to manage in that sense. So in this case, just now, if can we go back to the table here? Okay, if you look at this on governance and leadership, there are 8 points to consider. Okay, so now back to this new slides. Okay, here if you look at it, if you count, and we are all accountants, there are only 5 points. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But there are additional points here which overlaps, and if you add it together, this is where you will get the 8 points of quality objective, or 8 quality objectives that you need to put in place for your firm to be in compliance with ISQM. So likewise, can we move to the next slide? This is the relevant ethical requirement. The earlier slide, you will look at the table, it says 4 requirements. Here, if you add up together, it is also 4. Because under the firm and its personnel, there are 2 points. And under others, there are also another 2 points. So you add up together, there are these 4 quality objectives that you need to put into place. All right, so this is how that the earlier table is being compiled. And a lot of times you will see in the subsequent slides, it is always understand and fulfill responsibility. Okay, if you look at this slide, first thing is that is there a policy and procedure so that people understand? And if yes, you have made a quality objective. But the second part is that fulfill their responsibility. Did they implement what they understand or not? Now, this is very, very critical. And an exercise, an example. We all know exercise is important, but many of us actually take time off to go and exercise. So that is the where the fulfill the responsibility part or the implementation part comes in. So understanding is important, yes, but you must also make sure that it has been carried out. You will know that sometimes understanding and doing is 2 different things. It's at the firm level or whether it is carried out at the engagement level itself. So these are some of the examples of the quality objective that you will need to take care of. And here, be aware, it is relevant ethical requirement, RER. So relevant ethical requirements means that it is more than independent. Yes, there's a section on independent, but in addition to independent, there are also other relevant ethical requirements, which is confidentiality, competency and due care, integrity, and bear in mind objectivity. This is one major thing. Objectivity is wider than just independent. Okay. So just now we have covered the governance and leadership, relevant ethical requirement. The third one is acceptance and continuance of client. Again, you can see the number of quality objectives that you need to have in place. In terms of engagement performance, again, there are various quality objectives here. Now, just again, how you manage the quality objective also depend on the firm. Like for example, let's take the second box, the nature, timing, and extent of direction and supervision of the engagement team and review of the work performed is appropriately based. This could be even further broken down into direction and supervision is one thing, and then the second part is review of the working paper. And on top of that, work performed by the less experienced engagement team member is directed and supervised by a more experienced team members. It doesn't say refer to last year's audit working paper. It says it needs to be supervised and reviewed by a more experienced team member. So It could be one quality objective here, but it can be broken down into different streams or work stream, especially if you have different person responsible for doing certain things. And this may usually applies to the bigger firms where you will have a person who does training compared to a person who do the review to make sure that your staff are properly trained over the years itself. So how detailed you want to break it down, it depends, of course, on the size of your practices. Rationale for you to break it down into a smaller module to manage. And this work especially if there are multiple persons involved. But if you are the sole proprietorship and you are in charge of everything, so breaking it down into smaller modules also doesn't make sense, because as far as person in charge is concerned, your name will be appearing across the list anyway. So it all depends on the circumstances of the firm itself. Engagement performance. Next, resources. Okay, like just now as I mentioned, here there's a quality objective that deals with service providers. So if you don't have a service provider or don't use service providers, then obviously you don't need to refer to these sections. So when you talk of service provider, somebody asked me, if I buy the software from a software house, or let's say ASP, is that a service provider? I would say yes, that is a service provider. Why? Because don't you want to make sure that your software that you buy is up to date? And in this respect, wouldn't you would have already all this service contract with your service provider that they will provide you with the latest edition of the audit program? Because bear in mind, the standards are changing, and the standards are changing very, very fast. And the scary part, if you notice, ladies and gentlemen, you will notice that now, for a very good example, is the group audit. There's a new standard that just came out. Once the group audit came out, the code of ethics has been amended to deal with the group audit engagement team itself. And recently, there is a PIE pronouncement under the ISBA, or the Code of Ethics Board. PIE stands for Public Interest Entities. There's a new pronouncement. And when the pronouncement came out, last month, ISQM has said that they are going to have a targeted review of the ISAs to see where are the changes that will have to be put in place. You can see that there are now a closer and closer correlation between the auditing standard and the code of ethics. So once the auditing standard change, the code of ethics change. And in this case, the PIE case, when the code of ethics change, they are now reviewing the auditing standard to make sure that things are changed and come into effect at the same time. So you would need to make sure that you are on top of everything in terms of all these intellectual resources, whether shared by MIE or shared by ISB or shared by your service providers and so on and so forth. And of course, technological resources without fail. Okay, you will be using all these software, e-confirmations and all these things. So all these you need to be managing the resources. It's very embarrassing for firms to penalize by AOB because that firm has been using an audit program which is outdated. And we are talking about AOB registration. Up to date, when you say up to date, I ask you which version of the ISA are you referring to? Are you referring to the latest one, which is the December 2020, or are you referring to the earlier version? Do you know that ISA 315 has come into place? Do you know that ISA 540 has already come into place 2 years already? Have all these been incorporated into your audit programs, for example? Who is in charge in your firm to update all this? Of course, if you're a sole proprietor, you're the only one. Human resource. Again, there are multiple quality objectives that you need to put in place. And this is another example where you would want to maybe break down the quality objective. If your firm is of certain size and big enough for that, because it is managed by different people. And as an example, I show you the box number 2. Personnel demonstrate a commitment to quality through their action and behavior. 1. Develop and maintain the appropriate competence. 2. And recognize through timely evaluation. 3. There are 3 objectives here And in this respect, if your firm is of a certain size, most likely you are going to break it down into three modules. Because the first part on quality through their actions and behavior, it could be managed at the engagement level itself. So the engagement partner is responsible for that. If you decided to push it down to the engagement level. Second part is maintain the appropriate competence. This is where if you have a training department will be responsible to maintain the competence of the staff. And then the third one is timely evaluations. In your staff evaluation, whether annual or semi-annual, do you have a quality KPI in the staff evaluation? If it is there, it is managed by the HR department. So this is an example of specific quality objective can be broken down into smaller module because it is managed by different people. And that is allowed under the standard itself. Most of the firms, or at least a few firms that I discussed with, they actually don't have a component for information and communication. What happens is that these information and communications are embedded into the other component, and that is okay. As long as it is there in one of the components, you don't have to have a separate component of information and communication. And even during the exposure draft stage, some of the firms or professional bodies that have commented on the exposure draft has actually mentioned that whether information and communication should it be a standalone component in the first place. But I think the IWSP think that this part, I think the message is that information and communication must be a two-way flow. And one of the examples of two-way flow information is that if the firm has a centralized client engagement and acceptance process, the centralized body may filter the information of the client to the engagement level partner. And the engagement level partner in the process of doing the work may also flow out the information about the client to this central team of people who is in charge of client acceptance and continuance. So this is an example of a two-way flow. Another example of two-way flow is that if your firm has been subjected to practice review and there are findings, all these findings should be communicated to all the staff so that they know these are the possible defects in the firm's processes. And of course, you should also tell the staff what are the steps taken to mitigate the defects so doesn't happen in the future engagement itself. But in the process, the staff can also feedback to the firm if they notice that there is something that is missing. For example, the case of a firm who used an outdated audit program. My question is that how come the audit manager never channel it back to the partner to say that, hey, Mr. Partner, do you realize that the audit program is not up to date? Or is it the manager just keep quiet because that is not his duty? And this then comes back to the mentality, the quality, the culture of the firm itself. So these are further examples of the two-way flow style of information. SQM is, like I said, you already have all the quality objectives, para 28 to the para 33. From there, assess individually what are the quality risks for the respective quality objective. And you can see from the table here, the nature and timing and extent of direction and supervision. So this is the quality objective under the engagement performance. And the quality risk, that means the firm has done an assessment and they find out that senior members do not supervise the less experienced staff. So this is a risk, okay? But the other risk, the partner failed to review the file appropriately, spend enough time on the engagement. The firm did an assessment and find out that this is not a quality risk. So I don't need to deal with the point where it is not a quality risk. I only need to deal with the quality risk itself. So now you know that senior members doesn't review the work of the less experienced. So how do you respond to that? Policy established or direction and senior members train on policy. Yes, good. You have policy for senior, you have training, but you also still need to check and make sure that they actually review the work of the less experienced staff. This can be done through the co-file review at a later stage, monitoring and remediation, for example. And then the establishes policy that financial statement is not released until the engagement partner review the key working papers, and then have actually decided that this is not really a quality risk in that respect. But of course, you will still put that in as part of your policies and procedure system. So this is an example of a project management template. I don't even call it an ISQM template. It's a project management template where you can break down all the roles. You have assigned specific persons to do certain things. Very important, because this is a project management slide. You need to know when is it. Some will have a start date, some will have an end date, but the more important thing is when are you going to deliver, okay? The implementation timeline, and of course, comment or follow-up actions and so on and so forth. So you can now break down the whole ISQM into various components, different persons in charge, and take care of the different components if you have the resources to do it. Unfortunately, if you are the sole proprietor, it means that you have to do everything yourself.